base nightmare. It was a dark and stormy night on the naval base ship, the USS Apocalypse. The wind howled ominously, and the waves crashed against the hull of the massive vessel. Inside, a group of sailors and Marines were huddled together in the mess hall, discussing the recent reports of a zombie outbreak on board. David, a young Marine, sat quietly in the corner, clutching his rifle tightly. He had seen the horrors of the infection firsthand, watching as his friends and fellow soldiers turned into mindless, flesh-eating monsters before his eyes. He shuddered at the memory, the blood and screams still fresh in his mind. As the night wore on, the group heard the sound of footsteps approaching the mess hall. They tensed, ready to defend themselves against whatever horror lurked outside. The door swung open, and a figure stumbled into the room, its movements jerky and unnatural. "David," one of the sailors shouted, recognizing the figure. "It's David. He's been infected." David's heart sank as he realized the truth. The infection had taken hold of him, turning him into one of the undead. He tried to fight against it, to hold on to his humanity, but the hunger gnawed at him, driving him to seek out the taste of flesh. The other survivors backed away in fear, their eyes filled with horror and pity. They knew what they had to do, even as tears streamed down their faces. They raised their weapons, aiming them at David's trembling form. "I'm sorry, David," one of them whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "We have to do this. It's the only way." David nodded, his eyes filled with resignation. He knew what he had become, what he was capable of. He closed his eyes, bracing himself for the inevitable end. The sound of gunfire echoed through the mess hall, and David's body slumped to the floor, lifeless once more. The survivors stood in silence, their hearts heavy with grief and guilt. They had lost one of their own to the infection, a friend and comrade who had fought alongside them. As they gathered around David's still form, a sense of dread fell over them. They knew that the infection was spreading, that more of their number would fall to its insidious grasp. But they also knew that they had to keep fighting, to hold on to whatever shreds of hope remained. And so, as the storm raged on outside, the survivors of the USS Apocalypse vowed to continue the fight against the zombie hordes, no matter the cost. They would honor David's memory, his sacrifice, and ensure that his death was not in vain. But deep down, they knew that the horrors of the infection would never truly be vanquished, that they would always be haunted by the specter of the undead. And as they gazed out into the darkness, they couldn't help but wonder if they were truly alone on the ship, or if the zombies lurked in the shadows, waiting to claim them as their next victims.